My name is Elena, and this is the story of how my whole world changed. I don't even know where to start. Maybe with the first time I saw him. Or maybe with the first time I realized that my heart was no longer mine. It was 2 years ago. I was 21, a university student living in a small town where nothing ever changed. Life was simple. Classes in the morning, a part-time job at a bookstore in the evenings, and lonely walks home under the dim streetlights at night. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't really happy either. It felt like my life was waiting for something, for someone, and then it happened. The first time I saw Ryan was on a rainy afternoon. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The sky was dark, the air smelled of wet earth, and I was standing under the old oak tree outside the bookstore, waiting for the rain to stop. He was across the street, holding a black umbrella, wearing a navy blue jacket. There was nothing extraordinary about him, except the way he stood there, looking up at the rain like it was telling him a secret. Our eyes met, just for a second, but sometimes a second is enough to change everything. I looked away first. My heart was beating too fast, and I didn't even know why. He was a stranger, just a stranger in the rain. But that evening, I saw him again at the coffee shop near the bookstore. He was sitting alone reading a book, his coffee untouched. I almost sat at the table next to him, but I didn't. I didn't have the courage. For weeks, I kept seeing him around, at the cafe, on the bus, in the park near the library, always alone. Always with that same thoughtful look in his eyes, like he was living in a world no one else could see. And slowly, something started to change inside me. I began to wonder about him. What was his name? What did he do? What was he thinking when he looked at the rain like that? One evening, as I was closing the bookstore, I saw him standing outside. The sky was turning orange with sunset, and he smiled. Just a small, polite smile, and said, "You work here, right?" I nodded, surprised. "Yeah, I do." "You like books?" he asked, his voice calm and warm. I laughed softly. "You could say that. I practically live with them." That was the first real conversation we had. It was short, simple, but when he left, I couldn't stop smiling. The next day, he came back, bought a book he probably didn't even want to read, asked me what my favorite novel was, told me he liked poetry more than fiction, and slowly, day by day, he became a part of my life. His name was Ryan. He was 24, studying architecture in the city, but living with his uncle in town for a while. He loved music, hated coffee without sugar, and had this habit of tapping his fingers on the table whenever he was thinking deeply. I learned all of this, piece by piece, like collecting pages of a story I didn't want to end. We started talking more. At the bookstore, at the cafe, sometimes on the phone when he got my number, just in case. One rainy evening, the same rain that brought him into my life, we walked together under his umbrella. The streets were almost empty, the air cold. the sound of raindrops soft around us. "Do you believe in love at first sight?" he asked suddenly. I looked at him, surprised. "Do you?" He smiled, looking straight ahead. "I don't know. Maybe I do now." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't say anything. Maybe because I was afraid my voice would give me away. After that night, everything changed. Ryan started calling me in the mornings just to say, "Don't forget your breakfast." He would text me in the evenings. "Coffee at 6. Same place." Sometimes he would just show up at the bookstore with 2 cups of hot chocolate, one for me, one for him, and stay until closing time, talking about everything and nothing. I didn't even realize when I started looking forward to his messages more than anything else in my day. One evening, we sat on the park bench near the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. "What do you want from life, Elena?" he asked softly. I thought for a moment. "I want peace. A small house, a garden, maybe a cat, and someone who loves me enough to stay." He nodded, smiling. "I want to design that house for you someday." And in that moment, I think I fell in love with him. They say you never realize the exact moment you fall in love. It's not a lightning strike, not a sudden storm. It's quiet, slow, like the way day turns into night without anyone noticing. That's how it was with Ryan. Days passed, and somewhere between the texts, the calls, the long walks, he became the center of my world. I remember the first time he held my hand. It was at the winter fair in town. The streets were filled with music, the smell of roasted chestnuts, people laughing under strings of warm yellow lights. I was looking at the carousel when someone bumped into me, and before I could fall, Ryan caught my hand. "Careful," he said softly, holding on a second longer than he needed to. And in that moment, with music and lights all around us, my heart knew it was him. It was always going to be him. After that night, we started spending almost every evening together. Sometimes at the cafe, sitting in our favorite corner, sharing a slice of cheesecake. Sometimes walking by the lake, the cold wind turning our cheeks pink. Sometimes at the bookstore, where he would read poetry in a mock-serious voice that always made me laugh. One evening, as we sat on the bench by the lake, Ryan said, "Do you ever wonder what we'll be like in 5 years?" I smiled. "I hope. Happy." "Married?" he asked, his eyes glinting in the fading sunlight. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't answer right away. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Don't look so shocked, Elena. I'm serious. I can see it. A little house, a garden like you want, maybe 2 kids running around." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and realized he wasn't just talking about a dream. He was talking about our dream. That night, for the first time, he told me he loved me. It wasn't planned, wasn't dramatic. We were just sitting there watching the stars appear one by one, when he said it quietly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I love you, Elena. And I felt like the whole universe had gone silent just to hear those words. I love you too, I whispered back. After that, life felt different, brighter. Like someone had turned on all the lights in a room I didn't even know was dark. Ryan became my morning and my night. He'd call before my classes just to say, "Good luck on your test." He'd text me pictures of his lunch with the caption, "Missing you here." Sometimes he'd show up at the bookstore with flowers he claimed he found on the way. We made so many memories in those months. Long drives with no destination. Dancing in my living room to music only we could hear. Cooking together and ruining half the recipes, but laughing until our stomachs hurt. He started telling me about his childhood, about his dreams of traveling the world, designing buildings in cities he hadn't even seen yet. I told him about my fears, my insecurities, the nights I cried when no one was watching. And slowly, he became my safe place, my home. One rainy afternoon, the same rain that always seemed to be a part of our story, we sat by the window in the cafe. "Promise me something," I said, tracing circles on the table. "Anything," he replied. "Promise me you'll stay. No matter what. Through fights, through hard days, through everything." He reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "I promise, Elena, I'm not going anywhere." And I believed him. I believed in us, in love, in forever. Because in those days, everything felt unbreakable. Love. People think it ends suddenly. One big fight, one betrayal, one storm. But the truth? It ends slowly, like a candle burning out, one flicker at a time. I didn't see it at first. Maybe I didn't want to. After all those beautiful months with Ryan, after all the dreams and promises, I thought nothing could go wrong. But then came the small changes. He started canceling plans sometimes. "Sorry, Elena. I'm tired today." Something came up. "Can we meet tomorrow?" At first, I didn't think much of it. We all get busy. We all have bad days. But slowly, the excuses grew. The calls that used to last for hours turned into 5-minute check-ins. The texts that used to fill my phone became fewer, shorter, colder. One evening I asked him, "Ryan, is everything okay?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, just tired. College work, you know." I nodded. I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. The way he looked at me had changed. He was there, but it felt like his mind was somewhere else. I started remembering the early days, how he used to call me just to say he missed me, how he used to get upset if I didn't reply for 10 minutes, how he once said, "I can't imagine my life without you." And now sometimes hours would pass before he replied to my texts. I told myself, maybe this is normal. maybe this is what happens after a while. Love becomes routine. But late at night, lying awake in bed, I knew it wasn't just routine. Something was slipping through my fingers. One afternoon, we met at the cafe. Our cafe. The place where everything began. He was sitting there, looking out the window, his coffee untouched. I sat across from him and said softly, "Ryan, you feel far away." He looked at me, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then shook his head. "I'm just tired, Elena." Tired. That word again. We sat in silence. The same cafe where once we laughed so loudly people stared now felt like a stranger's place. After he left that day, I walked home alone. It was raining, but this time, he wasn't there with an umbrella. And for the first time since I met him, I felt truly, painfully alone. I tried to fix things, planned surprises, sent long texts telling him I loved him, asked him about his day, his dreams, his plans. But sometimes, love feels like talking to a wall. One night I asked, "Ryan, do you still love me?" There was a long pause. Too long. "Of course I do," he said finally. But his voice didn't sound like love anymore. And deep inside, I knew something was breaking. Not with a loud noise, not with a fight, but with silence. They say you can feel it. The moment someone stops loving you. It's like the air changes. Like the sun hides behind the clouds and never comes back. That day, I felt it before he even spoke. Ryan had asked to meet at the park. The same park where he once told me, "This is forever, Elena." I remember walking there, my heart pounding. Half of me praying things would go back to the way they were. Half of me knowing deep inside they wouldn't. He was already there, sitting on the bench under the old oak tree. His hands were in his pockets. He didn't smile when he saw me. I sat next to him. My hands were shaking. "Ryan, what's wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the ground like the words were too heavy to carry. Finally, he said it. "Elena, I don't think this is working anymore." It felt like someone had ripped the ground from under my feet. What do you mean?" My voice was barely a whisper. He sighed. "I don't feel the same anymore. I don't know when it happened. I tried. I really tried. But that word, it killed me." "So, you're saying it's over?" I asked, my voice cracking. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw no love left in his eyes, only regret, only guilt. "I'm sorry, Elena," he said. Sorry, the word people use when they break you, and then walk away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry, to beg him to stay, but all I could do was sit there, frozen, as tears ran down my face. Was it me? I asked softly. Did I do something wrong? He shook his head. No, you were perfect. It's me. I can't anymore. Perfect. He called me perfect, while breaking my heart into pieces. I watched him stand up. Goodbye, Elena, he said. And just like that, he walked away. No hug, no last look, no nothing. I sat on that bench for hours after he left. The world kept moving. People laughed. Kids played. But my world had ended right there under that old oak tree. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed replaying everything. Every moment, every promise, every I love you that now felt like a lie. My pillow was soaked with tears. I thought about the first time we met, the first time he held my hand, the first time he said forever, and now forever was over. My chest hurt so much it felt like I couldn't breathe. I didn't know a heart could actually ache like that. But it did. And in that pain, in that darkness, I realized something. Love doesn't always end with a bang. Sometimes it just fades. Slowly, painfully, until one day there's nothing left but silence and a broken heart. The night after he left, it was the longest night of my life. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the silence of my room. It was the same room, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Every corner reminded me of him. The way he used to laugh on the phone, the way he used to say my name, like it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. I heard his voice, saying goodbye, again and again. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like the night had followed me, like the darkness had moved inside me. I didn't eat that day. I didn't talk to anyone. My friends called, my mom knocked on the door, but I couldn't answer. What would I even say? That I lost the only person who felt like home? Days turned into weeks, but the pain, it stayed. Like an uninvited guest that refused to leave. I tried everything to distract myself. Music, books, walking in the park. But everywhere I went, there was a memory of him. The park bench where he broke my heart. The cafe where we used to sit for hours. The bookstore where he once bought me my favorite novel. It was like the whole city was haunted by him. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror. My eyes were swollen from crying. I barely recognized myself. Who are you now, Elena? I whispered to my reflection. Who are you? Without him. I didn't have an answer. I kept hoping he would call, kept checking my phone like a fool. Every message notification made my heart race, but it was never him. He was gone, and he wasn't coming back. One night I sat by the window. The rain was falling, just like it did the night we first met. I remember thinking, how can the world look the same when everything inside me has changed? I cried until there were no tears left, until I was empty. And in that emptiness, I realized heartbreak isn't just about losing someone. It's about losing the version of yourself that existed with them. The happy you, the hopeful you, the one who believed in forever. Now, all that was left was me, a broken version of me, trying to survive each day, and I didn't know how to start again. They say time heals everything, but what if time just makes the pain quieter, not smaller, just quieter, like a song playing in the background that never really stops? Weeks had passed, maybe months. I didn't even know anymore. The days blended together. Mornings felt like nights. Nights felt like endless tunnels. I started going back to college, back to the world that kept moving like nothing happened. People laughed in the hallways. Couples held hands. And there I was, smiling on the outside, but bleeding on the inside. Every night when I came home, I took off that fake smile like it was a mask. And then the real me, the broken me, came alive. I sat by my window, the same window every night. The moon became my only friend. I would whisper to it, "Do you ever get tired of watching broken hearts like mine?" Sometimes I'd write in my diary, pages after pages of pain. But even the words felt too small for what I carried inside. One night, I found his old sweatshirt in my closet, the one he left at my house when the weather was cold. It still smelled like him. I hugged it, like it was him, and I cried until my chest hurt. People around me said, "You need to move on, Elena. Move on." As if love is a switch you can turn off. I didn't want to move on, because moving on felt like forgetting him. And forgetting him felt like betraying what we had. But deep down, I knew he had already moved on. Maybe he was laughing with someone else. Maybe someone else was hearing his late-night stories now. Someone else was getting the texts that used to be mine. The thought killed me. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to erase him. But love doesn't just disappear because someone walks away. It stays, like a ghost, haunting you. And every night that ghost kept me awake. I kept wondering, was I not enough? Was I too much? Was there something I could have done to save us? But the truth is, sometimes love dies even when you give it everything. And that's the part no one warns you about. I fell asleep that night with tears on my pillow, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. They say the first step to healing is acceptance. But how do you accept a world where the person you loved the most, is just a memory now? I started going on long walks after college. Not because I loved walking, but because I couldn't stay in my room anymore. Every wall screamed his name. Every corner held his shadow. One evening, I found myself at the old bookstore we used to visit together. I didn't even realize where my feet were taking me until I was standing there, in front of the same shelves where we once laughed over silly poetry books. I thought I was strong enough to handle it. But then I saw our corner, the little bench near the window where he once read me my favorite poem. And suddenly it all came back. His voice, his smile, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I ran out of the store before anyone could see my tears. People think moving on is about deleting pictures or throwing away old letters. But the truth is, moving on is about surviving moments like that. Moments where the past hits you like a wave and you can't breathe. Nights were still the hardest. I'd sit on my bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing for sleep, but fearing the dreams, because in my dream, he was still there, smiling, holding my hand, telling me things would be okay. And every morning, I woke up to the same empty room. One night, my mom came into my room. She sat next to me, holding my hand. She didn't say much. She just said, "Elena, you're allowed to cry, but don't forget to live." I didn't know what living without him even looked like, but maybe she was right. Maybe I had to learn to breathe again, even if every breath carried the weight of his memory. They say time doesn't heal you. It just teaches you how to carry the pain better. Maybe that's true. Because even now, months later, some days feel like fresh wounds. Other days, they feel like old scars. I started spending time in the park near my house. Not because I loved the park, but because watching kids laugh and old couples walk hand in hand made me believe that maybe love wasn't always this cruel. One afternoon, I sat on a bench with my diary. I wanted to write, but my pen just hovered over the page. Because what do you write when your heart is tired of its own story? That's when a little girl ran up to me. She had the brightest smile, and she handed me a flower she had picked from the grass. "For you," she said. I don't know why, but I almost cried. Maybe because it was the first act of kindness I had felt in weeks. Or maybe because a stranger's little gesture reminded me that life still had small moments worth living for. That night, I didn't cry myself to sleep. For the first time in months, I stared at the moon and whispered, "Maybe I'll be okay. Someday." But healing isn't a straight road. Some mornings I woke up with a little hope. Other mornings, I woke up missing him so much it felt like I couldn't breathe. People around me thought I was fine now. Because I smiled, I laughed at jokes. I showed up to classes again, but they didn't see the nights. The moments when memories came crashing in, and I fought silent battles no one knew about. Because moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with a heart that will never be the same again. They say the world doesn't stop for your pain, and maybe that's the cruelest truth. Because while my heart was learning how to survive, life around me kept moving, like nothing had happened. Classes started getting harder. My friends began talking about future plans, internships, careers, and there I was, sitting in the middle of it all, feeling like my life had split into two timelines, one where I was with him and one where I was pretending to be okay without him. I started getting invitations to birthdays, study groups, weekend hangouts. At first, I said no to everything, but one day, I said yes. Not because I wanted to go, but because staying in my room felt like drowning slowly. That evening, surrounded by laughter and music, I realized something. The world wasn't cruel because it moved on. It was cruel because it expected me to move with it, even when my heart was still stuck in the past. One guy at the party tried talking to me. He seemed kind, funny, easy to talk to. But every time he smiled, I saw him instead. The one I had lost. The one who wasn't coming back. So I left early. People think heartbreak ends when you start laughing again. But they don't see the way music suddenly stops being music. When it reminds you of the songs you once shared. They don't see the way your smile hides the fact that your heart still skips a beat when you accidentally smell the same perfume he used to wear on someone else. It's like living in two worlds at once. One where you pretend to be fine, and one where you secretly bleed every day. But that night, before I fell asleep, I realized something. I had survived another day, and maybe that was enough for now. People think healing is like a switch. One day you're broken, the next day you're fine. But the truth? It's slower than you can imagine. Some mornings I woke up and felt like I could conquer the world. Other mornings, I couldn't even conquer the weight of my own thoughts. But that winter, something changed. I joined a small art class near my university. Not because I was passionate about painting, but because I needed something, anything, to keep my mind busy. The first day, I just stared at the blank canvas. The teacher said, "Paint whatever you feel." I laughed softly and whispered, "What if I feel nothing but chaos?" But then, slowly, colors began to fill the white space. I didn't know what I was painting, but for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about him, and that felt strange. There were days when I still missed him so much that it hurt to breathe. But now, there were also days when I didn't. And those days scared me, because they made me wonder, what if forgetting him was worse than losing him? One evening, as I was packing my paints, a girl from the class said, "You smile a lot, but your eyes look tired." I didn't know what to say, because she was right. I had learned to smile without meaning it. But walking back home under the streetlights that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A tiny, fragile, almost invisible thing. Hope. Maybe I was learning to breathe again. Slowly, painfully, but surely. They say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. I think time just teaches you how to hide the scars better. It was a rainy afternoon when I met him. Not the him from my past. A different one. His name was Daniel. I was sitting in the cafe near my art class, sketchbook open, coffee getting cold, and he just asked if he could sit. "The place is crowded," he said, smiling politely. I nodded. At first, we barely talked. Just small words about the weather, about the painting supplies on the table, about how the city felt too loud sometimes. But there was something in his voice. Calm, steady, not like the storm I was used to. Over the next few weeks, I kept running into him at the art store, at the same cafe, sometimes even at the bus stop. Almost like the universe was trying to push us into the same frame. But here's the thing no one tells you about heartbreak. When someone new is kind to you, it doesn't always feel nice. Sometimes it feels like betrayal. Because while he was asking about my favorite books, a part of me was still waiting for the old messages that never came. While he was making me laugh, a part of me felt guilty for smiling. Daniel was gentle, patient, the kind of person who never pushed too hard. He didn't ask about the shadows in my eyes. Maybe he saw them. Maybe he didn't. But he didn't try to fix me. And that was new. One evening, as we walked back from the cafe, he said softly, "You always look like you're carrying the weight of the sky on your shoulders." I didn't reply, because maybe I was. But for the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to let someone help me carry it. They say the heart has endless rooms, but mine felt like it had only one door, and it was locked. Daniel was kind. The kind of kind that makes you uncomfortable because you don't know what to do with it. After all, kindness had betrayed me before. One evening, as we walked under the fading orange sky, he told me about his dreams. Small ones like traveling to Italy. Big ones like writing a book one day. I listened, but inside there was a war. Because every time he laughed, every time his eyes softened when he looked at me, a voice in my head whispered, "Don't fall for this. You know how it ends." That voice was loud. The same voice that kept me awake at night. The same voice that reminded me of old texts, broken promises, and cold goodbyes. But then, there was another voice, softer, gentler, a voice that said, "What if this time is different?" I hated that voice, because hope is dangerous when you've been hurt. One night, I sat by my window, staring at the city lights, and wrote in my journal, "He is not the same person, but my heart doesn't know the difference. It beats the same way it did before the storm came. And I don't know if that's beautiful or foolish. Maybe that's the thing about broken hearts. They want to love again, but they're terrified of breaking twice. There comes a night when the silence in your room is louder than the rain outside." That night came for me. I couldn't sleep. The past was a movie on repeat. The words I once heard, "I love you, I'll never leave you," kept echoing, even though I knew how it all ended. I opened my journal again, but this time, I didn't write about him. I wrote about me. About how I used to smile without thinking twice. About how music once made me dance instead of cry. About how I used to love the smell of rain before it reminded me of lonely nights. Somewhere between those pages, I realized something. I was keeping myself trapped. Not him. Not the memories. Me. Because pain becomes a habit. You start wearing it like a second skin. And after a while, you forget what it feels like to live without it. The next day, Daniel called. He asked if I wanted to join him for coffee. I stared at the phone for a long time. It wasn't about the coffee. It was about the choice. Do I stay behind the walls I built? Or do I open the door? Just a little. With a shaky breath, I said yes, not because I was ready to fall in love again, but because I was tired of being afraid of my own heart. The coffee shop was small. Warm lights, soft music. The kind of place where people whispered instead of talked. I walked in, and for a second, I felt my chest tighten. Because this was the same kind of place where he, the one before, used to bring me. Same smell of roasted coffee. Same little corner table. Same cold wind slipping through the half-open window. Memories have a cruel way of showing up when you least want them to. Daniel smiled when he saw me, and for a moment, I almost smiled back without thinking. He talked about work, about books, about his dog who hated the mailman. I listened, but inside I was fighting ghosts. Every laugh reminded me of old laughter. Every kind gesture felt like a test I didn't study for. And then he said something I didn't expect. He said, "You don't have to tell me everything. Not today. Not ever. I just like being here with you." It was such a simple thing to say, but it felt like someone had opened a window in a room I thought had no air. Maybe healing wasn't about big decisions. Maybe it was about tiny moments like this. Sitting with someone who doesn't ask you to be okay, who just lets you be. That night, I slept. For the first time in months, I actually slept without tears, without that hollow feeling in my chest. But peace, it scared me. Because the last time I felt happy, it didn't last. It ended with a text message that broke me into pieces. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look different. Same tired eyes, same faded smile. But somewhere inside, a tiny flame had been lit. And yet, fear stood right next to it. Because happiness is fragile when you've lost it before. It feels like holding a bird in your hands. You want to keep it, but you're afraid it will fly away. Daniel texted me that day. Just a simple line. "Hope you're having a good morning." It was nothing, but it was everything. Because someone cared enough to ask. And that's when it hit me. Healing isn't a straight road. It's messy. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's wanting to smile and wanting to cry at the same time. Sometimes the hardest conversation is the one you have with yourself. That evening, I sat by the window, The city lights were flickering like tiny fireflies. People were laughing on the streets below. Life was moving, like it always does. But inside me, everything was still. Daniel wanted to meet again. Part of me was excited. Part of me was terrified. Because what if I laughed again? What if I felt safe again? What if I fell again? And it all broke again? Healing sounds beautiful until you realize it asks for the scariest thing: trust. Trusting someone else, trusting yourself, trusting life, after it has betrayed you before. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, am I ready? Or am I just lonely? The truth? I didn't know, but maybe you don't need all the answers before taking the first step. Maybe the answers come after. The cafe was quieter than usual. Rain tapped on the windows like it had something urgent to say. Daniel sat across from me, coffee steaming between us. Silence, heavier than words. I had spent nights thinking about this moment, whether to let him in or shut the door before it even opened. Because the thing about broken hearts is, they remember everything. The nights of crying, the unanswered text, the way someone leaves without looking back. But they also remember laughter, warm hugs, the feeling of being loved. And here I was, caught between fear and hope. Daniel looked at me, eyes steady, voice soft. You don't have to rush. I'll wait. That one line, it cracked something inside me. Because nobody ever waited before. So I took a deep breath, looked straight at him, and said the words that scared me the most. I'm willing to try, but please, don't break me. The rain outside fell harder, but inside, something finally felt light. The days with Daniel felt different, like I was learning to breathe again. He didn't try to fix me, he just stayed. Sometimes that's all a broken soul needs. Someone who stays. But the past, it doesn't let go so easily. One night I saw his name, Michael. The man who left me, the man who broke me. He had sent a message after all these months. I've been thinking about you. Can we talk? My hands trembled. Why now? When I was finally learning to live again? I didn't reply. But memories came flooding back. The way he laughed, the promises he made, the way he left without a reason. Daniel noticed I was distant that evening. He didn't ask questions. He just held my hand. And maybe that was the answer I needed. Because sometimes the heart already knows where it belongs. It just takes time to admit it. I went to the old park the next morning. The same park where Michael and I once laughed, once dreamed. It was empty now. Just me, the wind, and the memories. I opened his message again. My heart didn't race this time. It was quiet. Maybe because I finally understood. Some chapters are meant to end, no matter how beautiful they once were. I typed slowly, each word carrying years of pain and healing. I wish you well, Michael, but I'm not the same girl who waited for you. I've learned to live without you. Goodbye. And with one click, it was over. I looked up at the sky. The sun was breaking through the clouds like it was telling me, it's okay. The storm is finally over. That evening, I met Daniel. I didn't tell him about the message. I didn't need to. Because sometimes love doesn't need grand gestures. It just needs presence. He smiled, handed me a coffee, and said, "To new beginnings?" I raised my cup, a small smile breaking through years of pain, and whispered, "To life." For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was moving forward. And maybe that's what healing really means.